Stars like dust, dust like stars. I wonder where the heartache falls. Time to stop at the table, sit and drink with Cain and Abel, to see if we could make a pact and agree on some general facts. The deserts are all spreading out. I've seen rivers that have begun to drown. Miles and miles of heated seas, no hospitality. The earth is waiting for you. The earth is waiting for you to bow. The earth is waiting for you. The earth is waiting for you to bow. People under every rock, factories that never stop, greed and hunger and despair, cities lost in yellow air, canyons deep and mountains grow, diamond mines lost in endless snow, hillsides full of misplaced treasure, rules we can't seem to remember. Words get lost on the telephone. Wilderness without a home. Holy mountain, holy sea, holy infant we hold tenderly. Go down, Moses, go down slow. 100 years in the desert with no place to go. The earth is waiting for you. The earth is waiting for you to bow. The earth is waiting for you. The earth is waiting for you to bow. Stars like dust, dust like stars. I wonder where the heartache falls. Time to stop at the table, sit and drink with Cain and Abel, to see if we could make a pact and agree on some general facts. Stars like dust, dust like stars. I wonder where the heartache falls. Time to stop at the table, sit and drink with Cain and Abel, to see if we could make a pact and agree on some general facts. The deserts are all spreading out. I've seen rivers that have begun to drown. miles and miles of heated seas, no hospitality. The earth is waiting for you. The earth is waiting for you to bow. The earth is waiting for you. The earth is waiting for you to bow. People under every rock, factories that never stop, greed and hunger and despair, cities lost in yellow air, canyons deep and mountains grow, diamond mines lost in endless snow, hillsides full of misplaced treasure, rules we can't seem to remember, words get lost on the telephone, wilderness without a home. Holy mountain, holy sea, holy infant we hold tenderly. Go down, Moses, go down slow. 100 years in the desert with no place to go. The earth is waiting for you. The earth is waiting for you to bow. The earth is waiting for you. The earth is waiting for you to bow. Stars like dust, dust like stars. I wonder where the heartache falls. Time to stop at the table, sit and drink with Cain and Abel, to see if we could make a pact and agree on some general facts.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Non-Dual Roundtable discussion. My name is Tim Rothschild, and I'll be moderating today. While we're waiting for people to trickle in, if you could, it really helps us grow and get our message across. If you could share this stream, if you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, if you could like and subscribe, if you could go to our socials, Instagram, Facebook, all of that kind of stuff really helps us grow and get our message out. So we'd really appreciate that. And so let me open this up by saying I hope that you're all having a wonderful end to the winter season. On behalf of the Foundation for Nonduality, we welcome you to our fourth Non-Dual Roundtable discussion. This is where we, a panel of Jason Schulman's senior students and teachers, discuss the interface between ideas about non-duality and our daily lives. We are excited to be here with you. So as you may or may not know, the Foundation for Nonduality is dedicated to making the principles of non-dual thinking and practices as articulated by Jason Schulman available to the greater public for the purpose of transforming the consciousness of individuals in order to help alleviate suffering in the world. These principles and their practical application focus on the unitive connection between personal and transcendent consciousness, as well as a foundational basis for change and healing. Jason Schulman sees the study of non-duality, especially in its practical applications in everyday living, as part of the healing of the human soul. The aim is to live our lives as both healing and healthy individuals who are aware of and connected to the entire web of being, including the totality of who we are. Living the totality of our being means including all of our human parts in our awareness, from our great courage and longing to connect to our many imperfections that work against these aims. Jason Schulman's teachings are based on kindness toward the self and others, and the work of the foundation is to actualize this kindness in everyday life. If you don't know Jason Schulman, over the past 40 years of teaching, he's worked to reconcile the deistic or relative paths of liberation with the consciousness of Buddhism and other non-theistic paths to create a truly non-dual path of healing. one that does not exclude any aspect of reality. His work emphasizes the healing of the personal ego and its rightful place in any path that seeks liberation from ignorance and the awakening of compassion. It also seeks to bring the human world with its imperfections into alignment with the realization of transcendent awareness. In this way, we develop a conscious awakening to the sacredness of every sentient being and every time-bound moment. Okay, and now, before we dive into the conversation, why don't we do a short meditation together? So just settle in, 1-2 minutes here. Just sit back and make yourself comfortable. Your feet should be flat on the floor. You don't have to be sitting erect. You could be leaning. That is okay. And close your eyes for a moment while I take you through this meditation. It's called Inviting Everything In. So begin just by being with your breathing. Be with your breath as it is. Don't get caught up in thinking your breath should be deeper or more regular or more even or better in some way. Your breathing, just as it is what's keeping you alive, and that is sufficient. So just be with your breathing for a moment. So your intention in this meditation is to invite everything in. Begin with the sounds that are around you right now. Maybe you hear the sounds of other people talking in the background. Maybe a car horn or a siren. Maybe the wind or a bird. Invite all of those sounds in. We want them to be with you. We want them to be here. Now invite all of the parts of yourself to be with you right now. The small, frightened parts, the courageous parts, the lazy parts, the devoted parts. Actually say to yourself in your mind, you, the one who forgets to be kind to yourself, be here with me. Come in. You, the selfish one, be here. You, the one who is argumentative, be here. You, the one who remembers God from time to time, be here too. You, the one who forgets God from time to time, be here as well. Invite all of the parts of yourself and all of the parts of your environment to be present right now in this moment. Whatever comes into your heart or mind, whether it is a difficulty or whether it's a great insight, it doesn't matter. They are all treated equally. Invite them in. Let's be with all of this for a few moments. You can gently bring yourself back to the room, back to the space. So, this is an opportunity today to have a conversation about our spiritual lives. And what we want to do here is invite conversation. There will be time for audience interaction, and we'd love for you to participate with questions and comments in any way that you'd like to. And this conversation today, this fourth conversation, is titled Enlightenment is Practice, an exploration of effort and surrender on the spiritual path. I'm joined by Beth Almarini, Andrew Resnick, and Damon Farnham. My name is Tim Rothschild, and I'll be your moderator today. And now I'd like to turn to my friends here and ask, what do we mean when we say enlightenment is practice? Any one of you can jump at that if you like.
I'll start by saying that it's a big question, and there's not necessarily an easy way to answer it, but it might be helpful to kind of maybe look at the statement that we're more used to, which is that practice brings enlightenment. Jason, in one of his passages in the Non-Dual Shaman, I have it here, writes, eventually a deeper understanding emerges, the fact that enlightenment is practice rather than practice bringing enlightenment. Awakening is the surrender to practice. And so I think it's just helpful to start with that idea that, you know, when we endeavor to practice anything, we have a sort of goal in mind of where it might lead us, that we will get better at the thing, that maybe there's even a pinnacle that we will reach in endeavoring on this practice. And this is just kind of turning it around. So I think maybe the first stage of it is to recognize maybe the confusion that that statement brings in, that enlightenment is practice, that somehow these things are the same and kind of present at the same time. So I'll stop there and leave it to the colleagues.
So, Damon, we always do that. Oh my God.
I know.
So to me, practice and enlightenment are, I guess I would say, two sides of the same coin, that you can't separate them. You know, one of the passages in Jason's book, Beyond the Now, is that the self is changed by the journey to find the self, or the journey to enlightenment. We shouldn't make enlightenment be some separate, you know, big, different, unusual thing, separate from everyday life. And so they turn with each other, right? The more you practice, or the less you practice, depending on who you are, you can't help but enlightenment is just part of the whole thing. It's not something I feel that you can separate.
You know, as we've been getting ready for this talk, I was, first of all, what a great opportunity, right, to take these really interesting topics and sort of have to like wrestle with them and chew on them. And be confused by them and explore them, all in hope that when we get together and talk together, maybe something will come of that exploration. But one of my thoughts about this is that the word enlightenment itself is kind of a trap, right? Like, I think a lot of times in the world, we feel like there's something that we need to become or be that's somehow different than what we are. Like, that's kind of normal human behavior. Somehow, how I am right now is not okay and not enough. There's something else that I need to be okay. I think a lot of us feel that way. And then we go on a spiritual path and we take on, for instance, this idea of enlightenment, and then we superimpose the same sort of expectation on a word like that. It becomes this thing that we feel like we want to try to achieve or become, and that's like the pinnacle, like you guys were saying. And so I think, for me, what Jason's doing here is he's just kind of destroying the whole idea. And he's basically saying that, like, there is no pinnacle, there is no thing that we're going to become, that's on top of a mountain, that's a fixed, static place, and instead what he's doing is he's inviting us to me, what feels like to have a living relationship, that includes, well, we can talk about it more, with what we're going to talk about, but it's more of this sort of ongoing, unfolding, awakening process, as opposed to like some sort of a static state that we're going to achieve. So that's some of my kind of thoughts on that word itself.
Could you say enlightenment is like in an ongoing conversation with life?
Yes, you could. Beautifully put.
But I guess
that's it. We can go now.
No, I just meant I'm saying that because I say it and a part of me feels like I understand it, and another part of me feels like you said before we hopped on here, Beth, sometimes these ideas are like trying to grasp at water. Mm-hmm. So how is a conversation with life, what does that look like in an awakening state? And what does that look like to the rest of us that are struggling over here? Or is that even the right question to ask?
Well, maybe it might be helpful, and I found what Damon said to be fantastic around actually looking at that word enlightenment and all of the various things that we superimpose on it, is actually looking at the word practice and what that means. Because I think that when we think of practice, and we might think, meditating or engaging in some specific spiritual practice, which is true. But in regards to what you were saying, Tim, it also involves this ongoing conversation with life. What is it to live your life on a day-to-day basis, a moment-to-moment basis, in a way where you're using its contents and not seeing it necessarily as separate from practice. That practice involves all these aspects and domains of being alive. And what is it to use it consciously and to participate in life, and that, maybe becoming aware of a trigger in a way that just occurs in day-to-day life is your practice, for that day, not necessarily having to, sit down. So there are many ways to think of it. And yeah, I'll just kind of toss that in the air.
So I'm gonna bring in sort of what happened to me this morning, right? Is like this ongoing conversation with life, and kind of using this as like this ongoing relationship with awakening. So, like, I went on my walk this morning with my dogs, and fear came up about our conversation this morning about the roundtable, and it it starts to like sort of shut me down, and then fear on top of the fear, like, oh no, like, what's my response to the fear? And it's going to make it worse. And sort of all these layers start to come up. It's like, no, I want to go into this conversation, and I want to be brilliant, and I want to be alive, and I want to share things that are going to help people. And then it's like, but the opposite is happening. And what am I going to do? So I start, having a relationship with it. I could try to push it away, but really that's not going to do anything. And it's going to make me smaller, and less alive. Instead, what I really tried to do was to try to do my best to kind of actually welcome it in, say, okay, like let's get a little closer to it. Let me feel it in my body. Let me kind of, and I go through this process of trying to kind of metabolize, and come closer to what I'm feeling. And with a little bit of trust in there that by going through this, somehow I will stay alive through the process and not become, just smaller. And it's hard to do because when you're in it, all you want is for it to be different. But instead I kind of engaged with it, and then at a certain point I had to become really kind, and gentle with myself, and kind of like bring in this sort of soft attitude. And so this is just a simple example for me of, and then, okay, so we're talking about effort and surrender. And then at a certain point, right before we began the conversation, I surrendered it. And I basically said, I've done what I can, take the rest. So this was a little bit of my journey this morning on having a living relationship, with a really difficult place in me.
I mean, Damon, what it sounds like in many ways is, and you kind of said it perfectly, is that, something arises and then the initial impulse is, I want this to be different, right? And in some ways, practice is noticing the want it to be different and then saying, this is how, actually allowing things to be as they are in that moment. It's almost that simple. It's the, and I think along those lines, there's a belief that we need to get past the wanting things to be different. And it's like, no, of course we want them to be different. We want them to be more pleasurable. We want them to be easier, and we don't want suffering to be there. And so we have that initial feeling of resistance, but it's the kindness aspect that you mentioned, Damon, of softening and allowing, and that is, to kind of tie it back, that allowing, that's that container, that is, despite that's enlightenment, or a way of thinking about it that isn't necessarily as romantic. It's just as simple as being kind to what's there in that moment.
So I think sometimes, this is really about letting more be present to us. Sometimes I feel like, you talk about practice, and it's almost like you're excluding things, right? Or you have that wrong idea. So you're meditating and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to be calmer. I'm going to be a better person. These things aren't going to bother me, but they still do. And like just knowing that is part of life, and that too is practice, is, I think, goes a very long way to dispelling some of those thoughts that you have to work so hard to be so different from what you are, and that really is not what's necessary to be enlightened.
Yeah, there's so many to that, Beth. When we sit down, we have so many ideas of what we want to happen. If we decide we're going to meditate, there's so many goals, both that I'm aware of and ones that I don't become aware of for a while of, maybe when will I get more relaxed? When will I have that big revelation? And those are all present. And actually just starting to see those as, those are just thoughts themselves. And those have a place too. And as we kind of let go of them, maybe the space opens up a bit, maybe it doesn't, but it's, we have those expectations, and those are okay. And then in the becoming awake to those, maybe something else might happen.
Right. Exactly. I mean, it's letting more in, letting those things be there that actually are.
What I'm also hearing that it's sort of like we're breaking down all of our ideas of what enlightenment is, because we kind of come into this with, again, which is these preconceived ideas and concepts of what it's like to be awake and enlightened. And the truth is that if we flip it on its head and say enlightenment is practice, then it brings us back to what's going on right here and now, and can we receive our lives as it is? And that's the whole thing, isn't it? Coming back to
I
that.
mean, it's almost a disappointing statement in a way. I mean, I mean, it's great in that it takes off a lot of the pressure, but when we imagine enlightenment, we have as Damon was saying, so many ideas about it, and they're all pretty grand and romantic, and no suffering, and imagine you talk to 10 different people and they have 10 different ideas of what it is, but I'm sure they're all pretty amazing. And then when you say enlightenment is practice, you're like, what? That doesn't, that's the just day-to-day practice. That's not the thing. That's not what I think we signed up for. We signed up for a beautiful escape. And then it's realizing that unfortunately that doesn't exist. But it's actually something deeper and more whole that arises.
Yeah,
Right.
I feel like
it's like so much.
Sorry, Damon, you first.
I was just going to say, it's like it's so much more and so much less at the same time is what it ends up being.
It's like disappointment then for all of us spiritual seekers out there. It's almost like that's a rite of passage. We all at one point have to meet these ideas of what enlightenment is and be sobered by what we encounter. And so I'm curious now, right? We structured this little conversation as an exploration of effort and surrender. Why don't we bring that in a little bit here? So say I'm a spiritual seeker. I'm sitting down on my cushion. I'm ready to meditate. I have my eyes on enlightenment. How does effort and surrender work its way into this? Am I surrendering to a new way of my being? Am I working on myself to become better in some way? Do I just accept my life as it is? Is that what this whole thing is about? Can we speak to that a little bit? I'm curious to hear your takes.
I think this is fascinating to kind of like, I mean, on the one hand, it's kind of like, it's kind of the very basic crude concepts. Like there's the effort. Okay, I need to work on this. There's something I need to do. Like I need to wrestle with, parts of myself, trying to bring things from my unconscious into my conscious. There's sort of like work to be done. And then this idea of surrender, on its face, some people take that as the whole spiritual path. I'm just going to like give it all up to something, and trust. So, I mean, I think that and then we can kind of go from there, and as you start to kind of like walk down this path, I think they become a little bit more, what's the experience? It's like they're not quite such separate things as we think they are in the beginning.
Can you actually speak a little bit more to that? Give an example, if possible. If not, we can, fumble our way through this. But I thought that was a really interesting observation. They're so close that you can't really tell the difference at some point, huh?
So I'll try it and see if this strikes anything in you guys. So when we do effort, we're sort of working on something that we feel like we need to be working on inside of ourselves. But that impulse towards the working, so we're sort of listening to something that is innate in us. So it's almost like we're doing this work, but why are we doing this work? It's almost like there's something that is not about our effort that's pulling us or driving us towards something. So at the same time that there's work, there's also some other force that's not about our own effort that's taking place. So I'll share this idea with you guys, because as I was thinking about this going into this, something that some sort of verbiage that we use in the school is, the idea of nested opposites. And so if you start to think about effort and surrender as nested opposites, as a pair that are sort of dependent on each other, like that one couldn't exist without the other, it becomes really interesting. I think rarely do you actually experience them as purely one-sided or the other.
If I'm hearing you right, it's almost like effort and surrender, when held in this way, it's like they're in service of what Jason would call a third thing. Am I hearing you right when I say that?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great.
I pulled a passage from what something Jason wrote in Beyond the Now, and I think it'd be a good time to share it here. He writes, at some point, we need to get healthy enough to experience the humility and surrender that comes from knowing for certain that the job of clearing neurosis is endless and will never be fully achieved. Right? So our neuroses is endless and will never be fully achieved. As we understand this, we need to fully embrace our remaining imperfections in the certainty that we're capable of righting our wrongs, making amends, and repairing mistakes. Through this new understanding, we begin to see that there is no real impediment to being with God, that we are fully capable of reawakening from our habitual sleep over and over again. We see that even failure or blindness are no impediment to spiritual enlightenment. And this is a basic change in attitude and focus. So in this case, it kind of feels like the third thing might be an attitude shift, or at least it's helped by some kind of an attitude shift. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think that attitude shift is the letting go of what we think it needs to look like. That end of that quote you mentioned, blindness or failure. There's I always think of this quote, which I'm sure I'll butcher, but from Crime and Punishment, where it's something like, the fantastic things about lying is that they lead to the truth. It's that impulse. I'm wary of using the word enlightened right now because of our conversation, but it's in everything that shows up. You play a passage of music and you're like, oh, that didn't quite sound right. That information, and Jason once said this to me, it's made up of the same thing as the information of, oh, that was wonderful. It's not just the content, but it's where it's coming from, what it's composed of. And then it starts to create a softer field to receive whatever shows up, so that you're not as your preferences for what shows up start to relax, and then you can relate to just what's there.
There's another quote here that, as I was kind of looking for some stuff, it's in that First Light chapter that we actually used, I think, a month or two ago, where Jason says, all the effort that we put out must be done with exquisite kindness. Without that, it is only a type of effort that opposes our being. With kindness, however, this effort is a manifestation of who we truly are, and thus does not violate our true nature. We put out effort so that the great allowing that we call God or awakening or enlightenment or whatever you want to call it can manifest within the separate being that we seem to be. And then he goes on and says, it takes skill to know when to allow and when to work. Only when both of these acts are faithfully accomplished can we return to what we might call that initial and constant glow or hum in the center of our being. I just think that's a really exquisite way to kind of talk about this territory.
Yeah, listen, while we're talking about it, I also just want to put this out there for anybody that's listening. Please ask questions or share in some way, if you're being moved by the conversation or if you disagree. We'd love to hear from you. So, Damon, that passage was just awesome. I think it goes right to the heart of this sort of, do we effort, do we surrender, or even one of the conversations we had leading up to this conversation today, we thought about giving the title, I'm on a spiritual path, why aren't I happy? And it sort of goes to the heart of this, it's like, do I rest or do I move? How do I know which one to do at this point? So anyway, Jason also writes, awakening is our natural state, ourselves just as we are, and it takes continual effort.
Yeah. Several things. One, I love that in Damon's quote, I think he used enlightenment and the great allowing. I love that idea for enlightenment as the great allowing. I think that kind of points to where the territory we're in at the moment. And Tim, can you read that quote one more time that you just?
Yeah. Jason writes, awakening is our natural state, ourselves, just as we are, and it takes continual effort.
Yeah. That's true.
We're in paradox here. It's sort of a brain buster at first. How do we do this? When I was thinking about this in my personal life, it's like, I'm meeting this each day. I'm meeting some aspect of myself that I need to accept, and at the same time, I need to go seek out help so that somebody can help me heal from it in a certain way. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah. And it's
So,
this. Saying a lot, you go, Beth.
Again, sorry. To say, so it's like the statement, we're all perfect and we all need a little help. That's what that makes me think of, right? The idea that being as we are, and maybe improving a little bit. So both things can be true at the same time.
I also just want to add to that. When we talk about effort and surrender, and how they're very close, I know that one of the things I often struggle with is kind of efforting to surrender. Trying to get to this place where you're how do you make surrender happen? Work harder. And on some level there's a bit of the phenomenon of just trying so hard that eventually you kind of give up and then something else can come in, but that's also not something you can manufacture. And I think that's the other element of this is we don't necessarily have control over the result. Not even we don't have control over the result, but we can show up to ourselves, and that in many ways what practice, whether it's sitting practice or just being awake in your everyday life, is. It's just showing up to yourself and to what's happening.
Even that is
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, even that is what you're describing is a surrendering to sort of a cosmos that includes mystery and unknowns, and the fact that, okay, I'm going to show up and I'm going to meet what's here, and I'm going to see what happens.
That's great, Tim. And the thing is, it's not as sexy as like surrender on an Instagram post where someone's like, "I've surrendered to the goddess and the moons and this, and what we might think of as surrender." But I think that's a really beautiful way of it's so simple and not probably is very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Surrender to the moment, to the it's boredom, anger, but not that anger.
I remember when I was first introduced to these concepts a few years back, I was always asking, okay, and then what? And then what do I do? And then what happens? There's like this part of me that every time it wanted to surrender, there's this other part of me that wanted to grab the wheel and know exactly what was going to happen next. And sort of like, give me the roadmap. Give me the roadmap to heal. How can I become as calm and centered as my teachers are? Just give me the path and I'll do it. And it's a much different approach. Jason is asking us to embrace life in a whole different, more radical way, I think.
Wait, are you saying there's no roadmap? Because in that case, I'm out.
It's sort of Jason would say, we walk down the track, we lay down the track as we walk it.
Yeah. And once you kind of get over the anxiety of that, because you have to let go of all of those hopes and ideas, there's moments where it's also like, oh, like, thank God. Okay. It's like, it's easier. It's harder and easier than you think it is, because it's not this thing that you're trying to achieve. It's not this idealized state of perfection. It's just like trying to come back into life, more and more and more and more. And I think, for me, that's a big part of what the effort, side of things is about, is it's actually about finding the parts of myself that have turned away from life, right? That have been maybe historically hurt, don't want to get hurt again, afraid, have some idea about life, like all of these little ways that I habitually protect myself or turn away or try to control life. So the effort part to me feels like, kind of finding and almost like welcoming back into the fold, all these different parts of me that kind of unconsciously say no to life, and then by having them show up, it's kind of like, it's more of me that gets to ultimately then say yes to life, which is what I want.
Mm. Wow, it's like that meditation, bringing everything in, that we did, before. If there's parts of you that are, that you just shun, that are off away somewhere, I feel like as many of those parts of us that we don't acknowledge or let in, you diminish your experience of life by just that much. So, yeah, Damon, I think that was beautifully said.
What would you, and this goes to everybody, this question's open for everybody. What would you say to somebody who says, I want to be in life, but I'm too scared, or I'm too hurt, or, whatever the reason is?
I say start there.
Yeah.
Start there, try to do your best to start to meet that place. Not to change it, not to make it into something different, but to meet it. That's where you start.
And meet it just with exquisite kindness, and gentleness. And I feel, when we meet things without feeling that we have to change them, this is another one of these paradoxes, right? When we meet things not feeling that we have to change them or just, do anything different, that's kind of when things can start to change, can start to maybe shift a little bit.
And maybe if you don't feel kindness for that part of yourself, meet that with kindness.
Yes.
I'm thinking about a time when I was very sick for a while, and I was sharing with somebody who said, I feel like life is passing me by. I've just been sick for so long. He said, life could never pass you by. You can never be separate from life. But we, from time to time, we have this experience as though we are. So what I'm hearing from each of you is that the moment that we can allow or invite in the parts of ourselves that are too scared to go out and be a part of life, per se, that's the moment that we're consciously connected to life again. And if we don't feel like, we feel like that's too much, then we connect to the part that feels like it's too much. I'm hearing such kindness built into this path to be with what's here as it is. And then that's part of the effort, right? The effort to even realize, oh, I'm not being kind to myself here. Oh, I can have such profound kindness that I can include the fact that I don't even want to be a part of life. And that's what's helping me be a part of life. So it's really interesting. We have a question here. It says, it might be two questions. They look connected, so I'll read them out. As you're speaking, I'm feeling in me the connection between beauty and imperfection and how this relates to efforting to become better and being good enough as I am. The question goes on to say, do you have anything to share on this idea of beauty and imperfection?
The first thought that goes through my mind is, I think there's there's a lot of different angles that you could kind of speak to this. But for me, there are these moments occasionally where, I've worked with whatever is here that is so-called imperfect, or difficult or whatever it may be. And somehow having met it, included it with the kindness that, that you're talking about, Beth, it's sort of like, it sort of shows up in this way where it has its rightful place in existence. And, the essence of the thing hasn't changed, but the quality of it somehow has. Like, it sort of becomes part of, like you in the opening, you use this, the phrasing, the interconnected web of being. So even the imperfection becomes recognized as part of the interconnected web of being. And in that, it's beautiful. But, that can be, the trick is that if you strive for that, then it's very easy to slip back into the kind of bypassing of, almost getting rid of something in the goal for something else. So it's this paradox.
Yeah. To build on what Damon was saying, makes me think of, you take a piece of music and, you might take it, you can just have a piece of music built out of the most beautiful intervals and harmonies, but it doesn't add up to something because it's all too much of one thing. Whereas you might take, some very dissonant harmonies or notes that are in and of themselves kind of maybe ugly seeming or something you don't want to listen to, but you put them in this bigger context and the entire thing becomes a lot more beautiful. The same is true of any, good piece of visual art or really anything. I think that speaks at least to one way of looking at the what we might see as imperfections and how that relates to beauty. And I want to chew on a little more about how that relates to effort. So yeah, I'm not sure quite yet.
So, to me, beauty is all about what's present. And, if there's imperfection present, I know it sounds so kind of like, woo, but, the beauty in the imperfection that's there, because it is there, because it's present. And if this is allowed to be present, it contributes. It's part of the whole idea of beauty itself, I think. I don't know. When I look at something that's too perfect and has no like little flaws or imperfections, it makes me nervous. I don't know. Because it doesn't feel real, right? How many things in life, or, in nature, whatever, are perfect? What does that even mean? Right? Imperfection is a part of life. It's a part of who we are, and how life is. So it has to be included in the idea of beauty, because beauty is what's whole.
It reminds me of this experience that I had once in a while, where I'll be with my in-laws, and it's my in-laws, it's my brother-in-law, his wife, the two kids, 1, 2, 3 dogs. There's a lot going on. It's kind of chaotic. Some people are out of control. Some people are maybe a little grumpy. But then like there are these moments where it's almost like you see the perfection in all of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's just this like, this play of life that's happening in front of you that you're a part of. And it's got it all in it. It's got the good, the bad, the connected, the disconnected, and everything. But somehow it's just like this play of life that's taking, that's playing out, and it's beautiful. It's perfect. Those are the nice moments. I don't always experience it that way.
Yeah. We have a follow-up question. So, and this was rattling in my head too. I would say it a different way. So it says, this is so interesting. If everything is a 10, then is there such a thing as 1 through 9? You know what I mean? I think what they mean is, if everything's a perfect 10, if everything's beautiful, then doesn't that sort of whitewash everything here? Why am I more attracted to one piece of beauty than another? So the follow-up question is, as well as the inverse, if nothing can be a 10, then does 10 really exist?
I think they both, just to simplify it, and this is kind of the paradox. They kind of both exist at the same time. It's that what Beth was saying earlier. You're perfect just the way you are, and you need a little more work. It's both at the same time, and it's not, and could be the place where we get into kind of spiritual bypassing. It's not just seeing the suffering person and say, oh, but they're perfectly whole as they are, and I'm not going to help them because they're a 10 already. It's seeing it's both simultaneously. It's also seeing what might need work in the present moment, what might need that effort, and performing the necessary action in that moment, while at the same time knowing that on some level that might not be completely accessible in that moment, things are the way they're supposed to be. And holding both of those at the same time is not easy, but I think what we're endeavoring to do.
Right. Like it doesn't erase the personal. Like it doesn't take away the fact that we have preferences, that there's things that we, want and desire and we want to explore. And there's things that we don't like. Like it doesn't erase that, but somehow even that sort of has its place.
And to that end, Damon, it sounds like, someone who would want to see the world and everything as a perfect 10 all of the time. There's a sense of, I know if I was looking for that, it's a sort of looking for safety in a way. That if everything is beautiful, everything is perfect, and that sounds like that's the Garden of Eden, that's the perfect place to be. And at the same time, it's exactly what you said. We can't erase the personal aspect of it, the likes, the dislikes, the pleasure and pain of it all. Those exist at the same time.
So it sounds like a non-dual approach to this question about beauty is that somehow has to include the impersonal and the personal, right? It has to include the fact that we're all imperfect as we are, and we deserve a place and we have a place in life. And at the same time, it includes the personal. We might have a desire that we want to change in some way, and we have the right to do something like that. Does that kind of summarize it all right?
Yeah.
God,
Absolutely.
maybe.
And I appreciate that they brought that up, because I think as it's very easy as you start to talk about these sort of unified states of being, it's easy to sort of like almost misconstrue what that means, like that it somehow erases the personal, or that it erases, the realm of having preferences and desire and these types of things. And I know that what we're all talking about or intending to, very much includes that, as a very important feature of being human. So I appreciate that they bring in that question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any final words from any of you about this topic, about life, anything in general? We got about a minute.
Let me come up with a profound comment on life in 1 minute.
I would just say practice.
Good stuff. So everybody,
this is for Andrew. I found this and I thought
Yeah.
about you, Andrew. It's from What Consciousness Does, from Beyond the Now. Like a musician who is willing to practice, not only to become a better player, but because practicing itself is music.
Practicing itself is music, so too does the spiritual explorer. Damon, I highlighted that yesterday as I was.
Okay, everyone. We're out of time for today. Thank you so much for joining us for our fourth Non-Dual Roundtable discussion. If you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're on Facebook, please like. All the socials supports us, and we live and grow by your donations. So if you could please offer a donation to the Foundation of Non-Duality, we would be so appreciative. So until next time, we'll see you next month.
Okay. Bye. Bye.
Stars like dust, dust like stars. I wonder where the heartache falls. Time to stop at the table, sit and drink with Cain and Abel, to see if we could make a pact and agree on some general